Yes, the relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for some weekend picks. We got a really big weekend of boxing. I mean, there really is just a lot going on from Friday night going into Saturday afternoon and the subsequent Saturday night fight. There's just a lot happening. It's going to be a big weekend of boxing. So the first card that I want to discuss here on the channel is the Matchroom card. The card that's going to feature Oscar Rivas versus Dillian Whyte, Dave Allen versus David Price, and Derek Chisora versus Artur Spelke. Very good card, very intriguing matchups. Some more intriguing than others, some harder to call than others. The first one we're going to start with is the Dave Allen versus David Price fight. Domestic clash. A clash that is genuinely intriguing because you know that both guys are less than perfect. So the conclusion isn't a foregone conclusion. If it were Dave Allen versus some top 5 guy, or David Price versus some top 5 guy, well, there really wouldn't be any intrigue in that because the logical choice would then be whoever the top 5 guy is. But this in many ways is a crossroads fight. A crossroads fight between two guys who are competing at or around the same level, and
They got flaws.
one just isn't head and shoulders above the other. That's what adds to the intrigue. The fact that it's not a foregone conclusion, that you really don't know, because both of them are less than perfect.
It's not obvious.
You think about the implementation of both fighters. I'd have to say that David Price, respectively, puts his jab out there more than Dave Allen does. I mean, if we have to say which one of these guys is a jabber more than the other, it would be David Price. But it's not a bankable jab, you understand that. Yes, he puts it out there, but he doesn't control the distance with it. He doesn't maintain distance from his opponent. I mean, this guy does keep getting caught for a reason, you know? So yeah, David Price, he uses his jab more, but there's not a lot of intention behind it when he puts it out there. You know, he's trying to control the fight. He's trying to maintain distance. And one of his pitfalls is that even though he puts it out there, you know, even though he throws the left hand, he's still standing there.
Stationary.
A lot of times, you know, this guy's a stationary target, whether he's just throwing the jab out there or it's in the heat of an exchange or the other guy's coming on. David Price just stands there, whether he's admiring his own work or the other guy's. And that's how he keeps getting caught. So I think about that, you know, David Price, he doesn't have the most bankable jab. He kind of just stands there waiting for something to happen. And I see a situation to where Dave Allen, he's going to get inside on David Price. He is. He's going to get inside on David Price. He's going to jab his way in, whether it's upstairs or downstairs. And he's going to close the gap because David Price isn't particularly fleet of foot. And once Dave Allen is there, I think he's going to target David Price's midsection. I recall the performance that Dave Allen put on in the Lucas Brown fight. You know, he went downstairs a couple of times on Brown before landing a sweet left hook to Brown's midsection that folded him up like a beach chair. Now Lucas Brown is not as statuesque a fighter as David Price. So Dave Allen may actually find it a bit easier to go to David Price's midsection because it's right there in front of him. One, because David Price is such a statuesque fighter, and two, because David Price, he just doesn't move around the ring enough. He's not fleet of foot enough. You know, this guy, sometimes he just pauses, stands there, waiting for something to happen. So I see a situation to where Dave Allen may find himself going to David Price's body, causing him to drop his hands, and allowing Dave Allen to fire an overhand right, a looping shot, to David Price. And David Price, you know, God bless him, he just doesn't take the best punch. He doesn't. You know, not everybody's endowed with a cast iron jaw, you know, and we know that David Price isn't. I mean, he does pack a punch, and he does. I'd have to say that between David Price and Dave Allen, David Price is actually the bigger puncher. You know, this guy, you can't afford to let this guy hit you. Povetkin knows all about that. He got caught with a real short left hook on the inside in the heat of an exchange that sent him reeling back several feet into the turnbuckle. So yeah, David Price might be the bigger puncher of the two, but his defense is leaky and he doesn't take the best shot. Whereas Dave Allen, you know, his punch resistance, it's actually pretty respectable. You know, Dave Allen, he can weather a hard shot or two. So I will say that while both of these guys are less than perfect, neither one of them is defensively blessed, leaving both of them subject to each other's offense neither one of these guys is a defensive wizard. It is what it is, and that actually adds to the intrigue. It lends itself to the intrigue that both of them are less than perfect. But while both of them are less than perfect, I will say that I have more confidence in the wherewithal, the punch resistance, and the momentum that Dave Allen has garnered for himself in his last 4 fights than the punching power of David Price. I have more confidence in Dave Allen to win this thing than I do in Pricey. I'll just be honest. It's for this reason I'm taking Dave Allen to win inside of 6 or 7 rounds by way of knockout or technical knockout. I think it's going to take some doing, you understand? I think it's going to take some work. I think there's going to be some hitting, some holding, some clinching. I think we're going to see a bit of a scrappy fight. But overall, if I had to guess, and that's what we're here to do, I think Dave Allen's going to close the show on this thing. I think he's going to close the show, and I think he's going to close it by way of knockout or technical knockout, 6-7 rounds. We then come to the fight between Derek Chisora and Artur Spelke. A tougher fight to call than the fight we were just talking about. I mean, the outcome of this thing, it's not obvious. It's even less obvious than the outcome of Price versus Allen. You know, I view Derek Chisora as the tougher guy. I mean, I really do. I think Derek Chisora takes a way better punch than Artur Spelke. But in turn, Artur Spelke does appear to be the faster guy in the ring. He does appear to throw the sharper shots, the shorter shots, the snappier shots, and he just so happens to be a southpaw. He's going to be leading with his right, moving right to Derek Chisora's left. That may give Derek Chisora some problems. You know, the fact that not only is the guy a little faster than you are, but his jab may be coming over Chisora's jab. Comparatively, you know, Artur Spelke, he does appear to be the trickier guy of the two guys. You know, the more tricky, more elusive guy, you know, operates from different angles, fights on a swivel at times, knows how to move that head at times. It does appear to be a situation to where Artur Spelke has a hell of a lot more to offer up Derek Chisora than the last guy that he fought.
What guy?
Sinad Gashi, who, you know, he went in there and I don't know what he went in there to do aside from collect a check because he fought a negative fight most of the fight. Believe me when I say that this Spelke versus Chisora fight will not have the aesthetic that fight had. And that Artur Spelke won't just, you know, take a tour of the turnbuckles in response to what is Derek Chisora's aggression. Artur Spelke will display some aggression of his own. But it's for this reason that I'm kind of leaning towards Derek Chisora to win this thing. You know, I go back to my previous comment about how, in spite of Derek Chisora having 9 professional losses to Artur Spelke's 3, in spite of Derek Chisora being the more weathered guy and also being the older guy, I still view him as the tougher fighter, the more grizzled guy, and the guy who can deal with a hard shot better out of these two guys. And I think that, you know, given how aggressive Derek Chisora normally is, you know, this is a come-forward aggressive guy. This is a phone booth fighter if you let him be a phone booth fighter. Given that he is all these different things, I think he can press the issue enough to force Artur Spelke into an exchange that would thereby give Derek Chisora the opportunity to hit him with something hard, something nasty. You know, I vaguely recall the Artur Spelke versus Marius Whyte fight. Marius Whyte, who is in no way, shape, or form the poster child for fast feet or fast hands or sharp reflexes. You know, Marius Whyte, he's one of the lumbering lummoxes of the heavyweight division. And in that fight that he had with Artur Spelke, you know, the 4th round of that fight was an interesting round because Marius Whyte, you know, he landed some hard shots on Artur Spelke, sent him back. Artur Spelke, he looked a bit unsteady, looked a little bit in trouble, forced onto the ropes by Marius Whyte. I think about that, and I think about how, you know, Marius Whyte's not a fast guy at all. And he's not as characteristically aggressive as Derek Chisora is. I mean, that's Derek Chisora's calling card. Come forwardness, gamesmanship, gutting, gritty fights, and aggression. That's what he's known for. That's who he is. So I envision a situation to where, yes, Derek Chisora may struggle, but perhaps he can force the issue enough to lure Artur Spelke into an exchange. Force that guy to trade, and if he does, maybe then he can land something hard, something meaningful on Artur Spelke. And if he does, I don't trust Spelke's punch resistance. I just don't. I mean, I know that Derek Chisora has more professional losses than Artur Spelke, but, you know, you look at Spelke, you look at the Kaunaki knockout, you know?
Remember that?
You look at the Deontay Wilder knockout. Most people look at that as you know, that's negligible because Deontay Wilder is one of the bigger punches at the weight. He can knock just about anybody out. Okay, what about before that? What about the guy that gave Artur Spilka his first professional loss. Bryant Jennings, good fighter, solid fighter, but really not the biggest puncher. He had Artur Spilka in trouble very late in their fight, and Artur Spilka could not recover. That's how Jennings scored that technical knockout. Because, Artur Spilka, good fighter, but he just doesn't take the best punch. It is what it is. I see that, and that was back when Artur Spilka was undefeated. He's racked up 2 more professional losses since that time, and I see a guy whose punch resistance I don't trust. I'd sooner trust Derek Chisora to deal with a hard shot, bite down on his gum shield, and weather it than I would Artur Spilka. It's for this reason that, it's chancy. It is chancy. It's not a foregone conclusion. But it's for this reason I'm going to go with Derek Chisora to win that fight by way of what could be a referee stoppage. Which round is anybody's guess, but I don't think it's going to be in the first half of the fight. I think that this thing is going to go a couple of rounds before it gets to that point. But I am going to go with Derek Chisora by way of technical knockout. And now we come to what is the main event of the card, a fight where there's a lot on the line for both guys. For Dillian Whyte in particular, it's been a long, hard road getting to this point, being one fight away from what could be mandatory status, something that he's wanted for a very long time. But he's got a tough ask in front of him, a stiff test that comes in the form of Oscar Rivas, the unbeaten contender. We know what it means for the winner of this fight. We know what it could mean, that is. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about who do I like for the fight and why. I will tell you that this is a tougher fight to call than either of the aforementioned fights in this video. This is a fight where anything could happen. You understand?
Anything could happen.
That while Dillian Whyte has been competing on the world stage at the world level longer than Oscar Rivas, that doesn't necessarily make him a lock to win this fight in this division, least of all, where a knockout is always one punch away and anything, just about anything, can happen. The resume in and of itself
is one part.
The resume
of the story
doesn't always tell the story. It's a part of the picture, but it's only one part of the picture. You've got to look at the whole thing,
whole picture,
to really get an idea of what could happen. I mean, is that saying that because, Dillian Whyte has a better resume than Oscar Rivas, that Oscar Rivas doesn't stand a chance?
Hell
that he's
no.
not a dangerous opponent? Don't think that.
Hell no.
Don't think that.
Because anything could happen.
We think about what both of these fighters bring to the table. Dillian Whyte being the more experienced guy, but Oscar Rivas, he's got some things working for him. I'd say that out of the two guys, Oscar Rivas just so happens to have the faster hands. I dare say that. I dare say that he throws the shorter punches, the snappier punches.
Out of the two guys.
Funnily enough, they like to call Dillian Whyte the body snatcher. But I dare say that Oscar Rivas goes to the body a lot more than Dillian Whyte does. Yeah, that's part of what he's bringing to the table. That's part of his repertoire.
It's a body puncher.
But Oscar Rivas, he seems to be more of a body puncher than the guy called the body snatcher, funnily enough. So what do I see happening in this fight? In the early rounds, I gather that Oscar Rivas is going to be the faster guy and the more busy guy. I gather that if Dillian Whyte so chooses to open up and engage Oscar Rivas in the early goings of this fight, what he may find is that he's going to get beat to the punch because Oscar Rivas does appear to be the faster guy. What I envision in those early rounds is that Oscar Rivas is going to be the aggressor and that Dillian Whyte is going to play the defensive, looking to counter. That's what I gather. I don't think Dillian Whyte is going to come out guns blazing, throwing caution to the wind when he's so close to the world title opportunity that he's been vying for a long time. I don't think he's going to be reckless. Not in the early goings of this fight. What I see is I think Oscar Rivas is going to be the aggressive one. He's going to be looking to key his way into range with a short jab, and once he's there, he's going to let his hands go. He's going to target Dillian Whyte's midsection, try to take the air out of that guy. You wonder if Oscar Rivas doesn't waste more punches than he should when he does that. This is a guy who throws an awful lot of punches that sometimes land on the arms, sometimes land on the gloves, but better still, it's something that he does. He does load up his shots. And you wonder what that may cost him in this fight. I recall Oscar Rivas' performance against Hubo. You know, that was a fight where he was definitely targeting the guy's midsection, you know, loading up those shots, driving them, and wasting an awful lot of them on the guy's arms and gloves. And that costed him, you know, so much so that by the 5th round, you could see that Oscar Rivas was tired. He was breathing with his mouth open. His power seemed a bit sapped as a result of that.
He was tired.
And the situation I'm seeing here is we may see something similar, because what Dillian Whyte might decide to do is treat Oscar Rivas the same way he treated Derek Chisora in their rematch. Let him be the busier guy in the early goings of the fight. Let this guy punch himself out, so when the mid-rounds roll around, he doesn't have as much left in the tank. I think that Dillian Whyte may give up those early rounds so that he can find his way back into the fight at the half, at the midway point. Once Oscar Rivas starts showing signs of exhaustion, and once Oscar Rivas starts to slow down, I think that's when and where Dillian Whyte may find his way back into the fight, because I'm of the opinion that in those early rounds, you know, Oscar Rivas is going to try to pour it on, and he's going to try to pour it on thick. Dillian Whyte's got to be careful to not engage that guy too much, more than he needs to in the early goings of the fight, because I'm of the opinion that's when Oscar Rivas is most dangerous. What I'm thinking is that the characteristic of the fight, the aesthetic, the impression that the fight is leaving on people is that Oscar Rivas likely dominates the first half of the fight, and Dillian Whyte finds his way into the latter half and starts picking up rounds there. You know, with these two guys, it's not outside the realm of possibility that one knocks the other out, whether it's Oscar knocking Dillian out or Dillian knocking Oscar out. I'm not saying that's outside the realm of possibility.
Oh, it's possible.
But given that there are so many intangibles, the fact that Oscar Rivas, this is a step up in competition. There's a lot left of the imagination about this fighter. So it's hard to say that, you know, I see him getting knocked out. The conservative prediction would have to be a points decision. Either way you slice it, that would be the conservative prediction. So what I'm thinking is that, you know, Dillian Whyte is the guy who's got home field advantage here. You understand? Any round that ends up being a close round is likely a round that the judges are going to give to Dillian Whyte. And given what's on the line, how hard Dillian Whyte worked to get to this point, I don't think he's going to be reckless. I don't think he's going to go out there looking for the knockout. If it comes, it comes. But I think Dillian Whyte is going to play this guy cagey, and he's going to try to be as defensively responsible as he can given the circumstances. So what I'm predicting is that this thing isn't going to end in a knockout. It might not. What might happen is it goes to the cards, and Dillian Whyte wins a close one that may have people talking the following morning and screaming robbery, home cooking, somebody burned the beans. That could happen. It's really hard to approach a fight like this, given what's on the line, with any kind of confidence. I mean, it's entirely possible that somebody ends up getting knocked out, but the conservative prediction, at least from where I'm sitting, is Dillian Whyte ekes out a decision in a close one. That's what I'm predicting. That's what I'm going with. Dillian Whyte to win on points.